there. Today I'm just about to start this pet portrait. This is a 16-inch square pet portrait for a client for a secret Christmas gift. And I'm just thought that I might just show you this little tip about cleaning your brushes. I'm surprised about how many people who come along to my oil classes haven't actually seen one of these magical little devices before. This is what they look like. It's, I can't point the camera down, so I've just got to show you this little dish here. It's a little stainless steel, it's called a stainless steel brush washer. What's groovy about it is you can fill up the tub with terps. I like using the odorless solvent so it doesn't smell and stink out the studio. And the odorless solvent doesn't evaporate very quickly either. So because you're not smelling the fumes fuming off, it's actually sitting there in the dish and not evaporating on you. So that lasts a long time. But what I love about this is it's got this groovy little basket in it. I'll just pull this one up. So I've cleaned a brush on there so you can see there's a bit of a mark on it. There's a bit of sludge on top of that basket there at the moment. And there's a fair bit of sludge sitting at the bottom of this dish of terps as well. And the great thing about that basket is that it lifts that little grid off the bottom of the pot, so that when I brush my brush over that grid of mesh, it cleans the brush really well without stirring up that sludge that's sitting right on the bottom of the pot. So here's a clean basket that I can show you. This is what it looks like. It's got this little rim around the edge that lifts this mesh up off the bottom, so the sludge can sit on the bottom of the pot. And when you stir your brush across there, it doesn't actually lift up the sludge from the base of the pot, which means that you're getting your brushes a lot cleaner. So in one of my previous tips, I was talking about using synthetic brushes versus hog bristle brushes. Hog bristle brushes, like these ones, the chunking white natural bristles, these ones are really tough and they can take a fair bit of scrubbing. So when this is plunged in underneath the bottom of your basket of terps, you can afford to scrub across here fairly strongly and you probably won't hurt that brush too much. You might wear off a little bit of the tip, but you're not going to destroy the bristles totally. So these brushes are designed for scrubbing. You can scrub onto the canvas and you can scrub while you're cleaning it on one of these baskets. But these lovely synthetic brushes, you don't want to do too much scrubbing on this basket underneath the terps. So what happens is if you scrub this synthetic brush too much on the basket, and this one has probably had a little bit of that happening to it. Not sure if you can see that, but the bristles are now starting to flare out a fair bit. They're not keeping together in a nice, what I call blade brush. So when they start flaring out like that, often it's because there's been too much scrubbing happening on these synthetic bristles. And if you think of these as being a sort of a form of plastic, when you scrub metal across them, they're going to curl up like curling ribbon. So you want to avoid that. You have to be very, very gentle when you're cleaning the synthetic bristles on one of these baskets in one of these dishes. So one big tip I can tell you about when you buy one of these stainless steel brush washers, and they're very affordable. They only cost sort of between $10 and $20 US or Australian, about the same. And when you fill up your terps in there, make sure you fill it up fairly full so that your bristles are completely underneath the terps when you're rubbing them on that basket at the bottom. But the thing is, this is my magic tip for you, is, I'll just grab the little device that I always put away. So these baskets come with this little bridge thing that goes across the top of it. So I'll just slot this, and I have to be very careful doing this because of all the terps in there. But there's two little holes on either side of the basket here where you can put this little bit of wire in there and press it down carefully in there. You can see the trouble with this is when you've got a full pot of terps, it's a bit of an issue to do this carefully so that you don't actually slush terps everywhere. So you can actually push those down a fair way into the basket, and then you've got this little bridge across the top here. It's just kind of a spring. This is designed so that you can leave your brushes sitting in the terps. So in the US you might call that solvent. So this brush, if it's loaded up with paint and I'm in a mad rush and I don't want to clean it, but I know that I can't leave it with the paint in it, I can drop it into the fluid in there, and then I just kind of jam the brush handle into that spring. Now it's a good idea to lift it back up just a little bit so that the bristles aren't curved and pushing down on the basket. They're just suspended in the fluid, and that means that your brush won't ever dry out. It's sitting underneath the terps. So you could leave all your brushes sitting there when you're not using them, but I prefer not to do that, and I'll tell you why. It's just too easy to accidentally knock the top of this thing when you're in a mad flurry painting. You knock the top of this thing and the whole thing goes over, and whoosh, you've got terps everywhere. So whenever I buy these, I have a personal preference to not leave brushes in fluids either. To make brushes last a lifetime, I think it's better to gently dry them and lay them down flat. So what I do when I buy one of these things is I very carefully take this out and then I just leave it aside. So I just use the dish just like this without the big tall bridge, because that's too risky for me. If I bump it, the whole dish goes everywhere. So the great thing about this is you can pull it out and clean it anytime you want. Just wipe it off with a rag or paper towel to get all the sludge out. And of course, most people in class from our Learn to Paint Oils class have learnt about decanting your terps into another pot so that you let it rest overnight so that you've got clear fluid on top. Pour the clear fluid out onto a separate pot that you can reuse, and then clean the sludge out and put it into the bin. So you can clean this dish sort of once a week, but leave the terps sitting in there for most of the time. So that's the tip for today, is using one of these brush washer tubs. They're brilliant, I love them. The only thing you mustn't ever do is use them for washing up in water, because the water will rust that pot, even though it's stainless steel. So watch out for that one. So if you want to know any more tips, please go to the dojo, dojo.zenartart.com, and there's lots of free videos there to watch and learn from. Thanks for watching.